Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. In my review of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, I praised the fun new subclasses. In this video, I'm going to reveal my top 5 favorite new subclasses from that supplement. I'm listing these alphabetically as they appear in the book rather than in any kind of ranked order. And also, I obviously haven't had a chance to play any of these new subclasses yet. This is based purely on reading through the book and getting excited about creative and interesting new abilities. So, first up, one of my favorite subclasses is also one of the new classes. The Artificer Armorer is Iron Man, basically, which is really cool. First of all, you have a fantastic spell list. You have really all of the main combat skills you would want as a wizard slash artificer. Magic Missile, Thunderwave, Mirror Image, Hypnotic Pattern, Lightning Bolt, Greater Invisibility, fantastic spell list. But more importantly, you get a suit of armor. It has no strength requirements. It attaches firmly to your body. It cannot be removed against your will. I love the fact that it's even got the Iron Man visor thing where you can use a bonus action to flip the helmet off or on. You can basically make it like a suitcase thing from Iron Man 2 where you can take the whole thing off or on as an action, and you can use it as a spell focus as well as infuse it with all the different artificer infusions, and eventually you gain the ability to infuse multiple pieces of armor. Like the chest plate can be one infusion, and the arms, and just go all out on your armor. And then every time you short rest, you can actually choose what kind of armor style you want, which is almost like choosing a additional subclass, really, because the Guardian is more of a frontline. You gain bonus damage, and you can cause disadvantage to anybody who doesn't attack you, so you can be kind of a tank, as well as having a nice temporary hit point spell, defensive field as a shield. Or you can go more backline long range and gain some stealth abilities and the ability to just fire that classic kind of Iron Man, chest beam laser blast, which is really cool thematically. You can multi-attack. I believe you can use intelligence in place of strength or dexterity. It absolutely transforms your artificer into just a walking armored monstrosity, which is exactly what I wanted from an Iron Man D&D character. So just absolutely cool idea. I really think all of the artificer subclasses are really fun looking, but the armor far and away is the most fun for me. Next up, we have the Barbarian Path of the Beast. Now, I will fully admit that Barbarian is the class I am least familiar with. In our 5 years of playing D&D 5th edition, all of which you can see on this channel, none of us have ever, well, I take it back. We've had one-shot Barbarian, and that's it. Otherwise, we've never had a Barbarian character, so I'm not as familiar with this class as other classes. But the Path of the Beast essentially allows you to go into beast mode every time you rage. So most the Barbarian subclasses build upon the rage mechanic. In this case, it's like lycanthropy light. So you can either manifest as having some fangs, or your claws stretch out. It's basically, you're not quite a werewolf. And in fact, you can even flavor it as different things. It says, bestial muzzle or mandibles, different kind of were type creatures or things you could do. Even the tail, which works off of reactions. A lot of cool things. And then it builds up as you level up, which is something I really enjoy from these classes, which is something the Armorer did very well, is it front loads a fun new ability and concept that the entire subclass is built around, and then just gives you additional abilities for that core concept as you go. So obviously for Armor, it was your Iron Man suit. For the Path of the Beast, it's whenever you rage, you gain those bestial abilities. Well, in this case, you also gain even more supernatural abilities. In this case, at 6th level, it's all mostly out of combat, although having a huge jump is very effective. But you can also gain a climbing speed, including basically turning into like Spider-Man, because you can walk on walls or breathe underwater and gain a swimming speed. That's incredibly useful to have for traversing any kind of terrain or battlefield. And even later at 10th level, when you attack somebody, you can have them attack somebody else if they become like infected with your own rage, or deal bonus psychic damage. Just absolutely awesome for Barbarian. If I was making a Path of the Beast Barbarian, I would go full-on insectoid. I think that would be really cool. You could have mandibles for your mouth. You could manifest like pincher claws, have a scorpion tail for your tail. Obviously do the climbing speed, just have all these insect powers. I think would be absolutely cool and very, very unique. So I really like that it's kind of light lycanthropy, and the fact that you can mold it into different kind of creatures or beasts along the way, which is really neat. Another one of my favorite classes is actually for the fighter, which is, I think, usually one of the more boring classes. Sorry, fighters. But the Rune Knight, it's impressively thematic. It's tied to the giant runes, which is something that plays in to a major effect in the Storm King's Thunder campaign. In this case, you can inscribe runes 1 rune per giant type, which are like frost giants, fire giants, stone giants, hill giants, etc. And you can choose which runes you want. You can inscribe them on different pieces of your equipment, and then those runes grant you certain abilities that are tied to that giant tribe. I especially like that each of these runes, you don't have to pick between like a combat rune or a non-combat rune. All of them give you outside of combat abilities, so some kind of like skill advantages or tool proficiencies, and as well as a combat ability. So fire rune lets you, it kind of represents the domineering and the slaver, not hardworking, but the, factory kind of working fire giants. And in this case, you can manifest your rune via having an enemy take fire damage and then shackle them by like fire shackles, which is neat. So it's just very thematically appropriate for somebody who's really into giants in terms of their character, or if your character was like descended from giants or something to that effect. It ties in a lot of fun abilities. You also gain the like Dwergar ability to enlarge yourself as kind of the enlarge ability. Again, keeping in that giant theme, and you gain that bonus strength damage and all the advantages to the strength checks. Just a very cool way to tie in somebody's love of the giant runes and being able to use those runes and change those runes as you level up. And I believe there are a couple more you can unlock. I love that the 10th level ability is that you literally just grow a number of inches in height. You get to roll how much your character grows because they're super into giants, or maybe they descended from giants, whatever you want to use it. Yes, you also do extra damage as part of your giant's might, but mostly you're taller, which is fantastic. So that is the fighter Rune Knight. One that really jumped out to me was probably the first one, honestly, that jumped out to me as being especially just cool visually, is the Monk Way of the Astral Self. This is a monk subclass where you can turn on a Super Saiyan mode where you manifest these astral arms. And I really like that the text describes the fact that your astral self doesn't have to be just a ghostly version of yourself. It can be a completely different kind of creature. It's whatever is kind of inside of your willpower and your sense of being. So, and it mentioned the fact that you could have a kind of a lanky, meek character manifesting as a minotaur with their astral self, or somebody who's like a ferocious orc manifesting as kind of a beautiful, delicate fairy, just depending on, how you look at yourself on the inside. I think that's really cool thematically, and mechanically, it obviously has some big benefits. You turn it on as a bonus action. You deal force damage to those around you. You can make attacks using your wisdom modifier instead of strength or dex, I believe, which is very interesting. So maybe you could even have a high, and you could work that into your character build, where maybe you do have somebody who's wants to be a monk and is all about that, but maybe isn't physically capable, and they can manifest this astral self and literally just use their own willpower as their attacking force. And like a lot of those other ones, like armor, it builds upon that initial feature of being able to manifest your astral self. I believe use a keep one as a bonus action. And so it starts out as arms. At 6th level, you can also gain, it says spectral visage, so some kind of helmet or mask, which grants you like advantage on insight or magical dark vision out to 120 feet, which is pretty big, or even a form of, I believe, telepathy, which is very cool. And then at 11th level, it's straight up, you have this entire full body astral form, which you could essentially transform into a different creature, just, visually as a kind of a cool deal. And you actually can deflect not even just arrows, but then energy, and gain even more damage in your arms. So I love the visual aspect of the astral self, and I like that it grows with you as you level up. So it starts out with just the arms, the mask, and then the entire full body. That's a really cool feature, and I would be very interested to know how people would view their own astral self and be able to kind of role play that visual quality of it. And lastly, but not leastly, we have the Warlock Fathomless. This one is all about having their patron be some kind of deep sea creature, like a kraken or some powerful force. Obviously, very, very thematic with any kind of water-themed character, like a Triton or a Water Genasi or something like that. But you could have anybody who's just super into water, and I like that it kind of, the backstory almost writes itself. They could have somebody who was on like a ship and they fell overboard and they were saved, and now they worship the ocean, or a specific creature in the ocean or something to that effect. Obviously, you gain spells that are very thematically tied to the ocean, but most importantly, you gain the ability to summon a tentacle. And yes, if you look at the rules, it's basically just a spiritual weapon. In fact, I think it might be a slightly underpowered spiritual weapon, with the added benefit that it can reduce opponent speeds by 10 feet, and they do cold damage instead of bludgeoning damage. But it's basically a spiritual weapon, but it's a tentacle. It's just really fun. One of my favorite spells from Pillars of Eternity 2 was the ability, I forgot what the spell was called, but you literally summoned, I think, a trio of tentacles. You couldn't move them, but they would just sit there on their own turn and just bash people around. It was really fun and just visually cool looking. And I would have absolutely a bunch of fun with this random ass giant tentacle that burst out of whatever ground or whatever area you were in to just slap people around. And then you could actually move this tentacle along and just, I mean, there's so many jokes you can make with the tentacle. It's just all hail the tentacle. You also gain underwater breathing and a swim speed if you weren't already something like a Triton. And at 6th level, the tentacle can actually act defensively as a reaction. You can reduce damage if somebody's near the tentacle. The Warlock doesn't usually get a whole lot of like supportive abilities. It's usually like a ranged DPS or something to that effect. So that could be a really fun use of the tentacle, is all gather around the tentacle because it will protect you. Hail the tentacle. I just think that's a fun ability, and I like the idea of a Warlock who specifically worships a deep, dark patron in the bottom of the ocean. And that is all 5 of my top 5 subclasses of my favorites. Honorable mentions, the ones that I did really enjoy but didn't quite make the list, was the Bard College of Creation, the Druid Circle of Spores, the Rogue Soul Knife, and basically all of the other Artificer subclasses. I think the Artificer is a really fun class with some really neat subclasses, but none of them are quite as good as being freaking Iron Man. All right, that will do it for my list of the top 5 subclasses of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Thank you.